What's going on, everybody? Doc and Sloth back again with Average Gamer Guys, and today we are going to be talking really card balances, things that we're hoping to see. We're going to focus in on 10 cards, really a few more than that. We're going to lump a few together, but we're going to focus on 10 cards that we think really kind of reaches a broad spectrum. They're either too powerful, not powerful enough. We'll talk energy cost, total damage, health, a whole myriad of different things to include abilities as well. So we're just going to jump right into it. Sloth, I think you were the one that was telling me Reddit's probably a really good place. They got some mods that are looking at some of the feedback and obviously taking a lot of the feedback that the community's given. So I don't know if you want to mention that real quick while I get over to the first cards.
Yeah, they actually on the Halo Wars subreddit will actually put a link in the description over that way. They have a sticky thread that talks about balances, bugs, tips, tricks, things like that. That's actually a really good place to get in touch with devs. I have seen devs from 343, the community outreach kind of guy for 343, and as well as Creative Assembly, who is obviously the specific company that is taking care of the Halo Wars 2 game by itself. So that's actually a really good way to get back in touch with them, to reach out to them. I talked to, I put in a comment with some feedback on that thread, and actually got a response back from one of the devs. Super cool guy, really nice. They're really approachable, and I mean, if you want the community to help you find things and help you really tweak the game, they're doing it perfectly. They're really accessible and really cool, and they've let us get our hands on this for kind of a long time. And we actually just put up a pack opening video where they gave us 20 packs each. So if you haven't actually gotten on to do that, do it. 20 free packs just for playing. So that's actually going to help them also find some balancing kind of things, because if you have more units, you can try out more units.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, this video, our point here was trying to get kind of our thoughts out there. Again, with the time that we had played in the game, we racked up quite a bit of time. We'll have a couple more days once this video goes live to finish out the beta and really just kind of get the discussion going. Hopefully we give you some new thoughts and maybe some thoughts that you were thinking as well to kind of reinforce some of the units that you guys have been using and playing with and thought might need some balance. And maybe we're definitely going to gloss over some things. So if there's absolutely something you're adamant about, throw it in the comments. But honestly, better head over to that Reddit thread, and let the guys know. I'm all over the place today. I apologize. Um, but jumping right into this, our first two cards that I want to talk about really quickly, we're going to kind of bunch them together. Not necessarily because they're bad in and of their own right. I just don't know if they fit with this specific mode and how it's played. The first two cards we're going to talk about is Advanced Optics. If you're not familiar with it or haven't had the chance to play it, small AoE, drop it down for 50 energy, increase target units line of sight and weapon range, and then kind of pairing that up together with the Watchtower, which is a Professor Anders card for 60 energy at the uncommon rarity. Essentially going to increase sight ranges and also essentially be a permanent detect unit once it's dropped in on the battlefield. I highlight these two cards for a few reasons. One, I've really never seen anybody play them. To be honest, I don't think I've ever seen anyone actually deploy a Watchtower. Now, I'm not going to say that nobody does, but I've played quite a few games. Loft, you've done the same. And when we were kind of talking about this prior to this video kicking off, we realized we really hadn't ever seen it. And then same thing with Advanced Optics. I think the abilities, what they do, and the energy cost range that they're in are perfectly fine, to be 100% honest. They're good, low cost, essentially powers. They do useful things. But me and Sloth were really talking about, we don't know if it fits in this fast-paced, essentially 10-minute game that you're going to end up running. Watchtower to me, and even Advanced Optics probably has a little bit more play than the Watchtower does. But with Watchtower, really, I don't see you dropping it in for the sole fact, if you say you drop it in over a point, obviously you're helping with detect, you're increasing sight range. That's great. Um, but then an enemy comes in, contests you for that point, maybe takes it, and then this thing's gone. And it's useful. It's absolutely useless to you unless you have a lot of rush units that maybe you can drop in, right there to fight. But honestly, it's probably just going to get destroyed. So we kind of want to highlight these. Again, we were also talking, maybe Blitz mode evolves and maybe it has kind of like subcategories under it, or sub games that you might be able to play that kind of like maybe you defend a point and attack a point. I think Sloth, that was the one thing that you had mentioned, which honestly is a really neat idea and would make certain cards like these a little bit more playable for a game that honestly runs a little bit longer. So maybe the 3v3 matches, maybe the map gets bigger, maybe there's more points or something like that. Where having the ability to see in a longer range and detect units would actually be like beneficial, because maybe you can't cover everything, or maybe there's like a point that you think you'll be able to hold just based on its geography, but you still want to have eyes on it. And kind of same thing with advanced optics. Again, I think it's a neat idea, but for me, I'm probably placing it on a Kodiak or a Blisterback, and everything else I don't know that I'm going to put it on, just for the sole fact that I don't think essentially the range that it increases is enough.
Yeah, and I mean it's important to note that these are cards that we're kind of looking at for balances, or this is actually the perfect case of it's a square peg trying to be put in a round hole.
Right.
These are just such, I feel like, defensive cards. The current kind of domination setup of Blitz right now does not really facilitate a super defensive playstyle. There's a lot of moving back and forth. And in our first couple videos, we talked about taking what the enemy team is giving you and things like that. So it doesn't really facilitate just, all right, they're dropping a Scarab on B, I'm out of there, I'm going to take C while they're so focused on B. These, especially the Watchtower, doesn't facilitate that. So I brought it up earlier off camera. We were talking, maybe Blitz mode evolves, and maybe we have I go into a game and I'm selecting an offensive deck and a defensive deck, and we have 2 rounds. I have to defend the point the first round. Doc, you have to take it from me, and then the next round we switch. So obviously increase the XP gain because it's going to be double the length, but that would make more sense. But right now in this domination style, it doesn't really make sense to us to fit in the Watchtower and optics together with this kind of give and take kind of game style. So something we'd like to see. I mean, it definitely needs some work, but definitely not bad cards, not bad units and buildings and play styles and stuff with all of these. They just kind of need some work. They need some tweaking. And I'll parlay that into the sniper unit. I actually really like the sniper unit. It's honestly kind of a weird setup. I don't know what the helmet that sniper is wearing, but it freaks me out. But this is a unit that can't touch vehicles and it can't touch air. It is purely, it's literally one single guy. If you've ever deployed him, it's one single sniper, and he carries around with him a spotter drone. So it's one guy, and he's there purely for anti-infantry. I feel like he is so focused, and he has literally one avenue to help out. I feel like this is one unit that should be permacloaked. He doesn't have the usefulness after 90 seconds that he needs to make him worth, for one, putting in my deck, and for two, 60 energy. 60 is kind of a lot. If I would either like to see his energy cost dropped, or I would like to see him permacloaked, because otherwise, I mean, he's kind of silly after that. His range is good, his damage is good. He just does not have any longevity at all.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that, real quick, is just that even if they kept him how he is at his energy cost, with his current capabilities, the 90-second cloak, even if they gave him really bad capability to attack vehicles in air, that might make it worth it to it as well. Because again, a lot of times I've seen people drop him in. They might move him to a point, and then he just sits there and he doesn't do anything. And then you call a unit in that finds him, and then he dies because there's nothing he can shoot. So Again, I think he's okay. He's kind of on the bad side as it is right now. Sloth, I like your ideas. Again, if you maybe gave him the ability even to just attack one of the things, maybe you gave him the ability to shoot some
Yeah.
air. That could make him kind of viable, to be honest, because then some stuff's not going to be able to see him, and he can get some air damage in. I think there's quite a few different ways they could go with this one, but absolutely great points.
Yeah, and that would actually kind of almost help solve too a lot of the issues with the all of the cards, all of the units across the board not having a very large focus on anti-air. We see a couple units that are very focused against anti-air, and everything else is either bad or kind of meh. As opposed to, I mean, the UNSC forces, almost everything's good against vehicles. So there's a super large focus on vehicles and not so much on anti-air. And canonically throughout the games, the sniper rifle has been a fantastic way to combat uh, the Scorpion, sniping a driver out of the Scorpion, sniping the old Hornets, or not the Hornets, were they the Falcons in Halo Reach? The sniper rifle is a very strong weapon, so it's been a good way to combat vehicles and air units throughout all the rest of the games. So I understand the rock paper scissor mechanic for an RTS, but maybe don't make him completely useless against vehicles in air. We'll see, but that's something I'd like to see. The next one, I'm sure there are some of you that want to punch me in the face if I ever say the words blood fuel locust again. But here he is. This is we've talked since almost day one. Too strong, health, too much range. Bottom line, if you want a really quick synopsis of it, that's it. The siphon ability makes him incredibly hard to kill. In our last video, I had a lockdown Scorpion against two of these Blood Fuel Locusts, and the Locust won. It was, and it wasn't even really that close, is the sad thing. I had to have a Vulture come in after the lockdown Scorpion was done just to mop him up. It's, I don't know, it's too much range. The damage honestly doesn't feel like a lot, but they can hit you from so far away, and it's constant damage because it's one little beam just sitting there hitting you the whole time. It's kind of like, you get poked with a needle. It kind of hurts, but it's not that bad. But if you get poked with a needle incessantly for the next 20 minutes, it's going to be a different story. And especially what little damage that thing is doing, it's doing consistently, and it's also healing itself with a gigantic shield and a health pool. This is one that we feel like needs a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't mind the energy cost here. You hit all the real key points, and again, that the consistent energy is, I think, the reason this unit gets in trouble, because again, it's constantly healing itself. I think if it was like a charge beam for a few seconds, it cooled, and then it attacked again, honestly, I think that might fix quite a bit of the issue. But you hit it all. I think they could maybe reduce either the shield on it or a little bit of the health that it actually has, to kind of help balance it as well. I want it to be a unit that people use because I think they're cool, but this is probably, out of a lot of them, probably near the top of our list for things that really need to take a hard look.
Yeah.
So hopping over to our next one, some of these we're not going to spend so much time on. Armored Marines, really neat unit, 100 energy cost, has the grenade throw ability and the guard ability. Not familiar with guard, essentially takes all the damage, and honestly, that is the single problem with this unit. Not for the fact that it has the guard ability, but these Armored Marines really don't seem to get any additional health. I think they get one additional health bar compared to like standard Marines that get dropped in. And that's a problem because they're soaking everything in. So for me, this unit needs one of two things. It either needs a huge health buff, and I'm talking like a huge one to make guard ability really worth it on this unit, or it needs to get a pretty significant energy cut. Even if it got down into like 60 range, you make it kind of around where maybe a reactive Cyclops is, 50-60. I think that would okay. I think that would help balance this. But honestly, I tried to use these guys. I really did. I thought they're a really neat unit. But they just don't last long enough against any amount of vehicles or small army that an opponent will bring to you. So it really feels a lot of times I was calling them in and I was like, man, I'm gonna waste these guys, and they'd get into a fight and they'd be gone in a couple seconds, and I'd be like, yeah, I really wasted those guys.
Yeah, that was 100 energy right down the toilet. Yeah, and that's exactly it. They're neutral against everything. They have no benefit, and we feel like the armored section of armored Marines is just a guard ability. We don't feel like there's any armor there. It definitely does not feel that way. They just don't have the health pool to take the sustained damage for an entire army, like you talked about. And the thing that's most frustrating to me is Anders gets the armored Marines. What does everybody else get? A stealth Kodiak and a lockdown Scorpion.
Right.
How is that fair to Anders?
Right.
She gets the short end of the stick big time there. So I don't know. That one I'm stuck. I either want a lower energy cost so that she can pump out more, but I think I would prefer actually making them scarier units. I know Cutter has the ODSTs, and he's always been known as the big infantry guy. But if you're gonna make Anders have this focus on the infantry like that with her top tier rare 100 plus energy unit, um, it needs some work. I would prefer them to be stronger when it comes down to it. I think honestly it would make sense for her to have the stealth Kodiak instead of Cutter, and have Cutter have the armored Marines. But I don't know. I think they probably did that so that each character could kind of have a little bit more varied uh, pool of cards to work with, which is fair.
Right.
We're going to switch back over to the banished side. The Siphon Field. 120 energy, the special card for Decimus, which this is actually a great place to start because Decimus needs a lot of work. I feel like he's far and away the worst leader that we have out of the 6 right now. It's 120 energy, does the same thing basically that Anders restoration drones do, which hers is 70 energy, 50 energy less. And he also damages nearby enemies that are in the AoE. That doesn't matter to me. If I'm dropping a Siphon Field and I'm trying to heal my units, I'm worried about my units. I'm not really worried about doing a ton of damage to them. I just feel like this one is basically a knockoff version of restoration drones that we kind of hammered this kind of vampire idea into, because that's what Decimus is all about. It's not worth a 50 energy increase over the restoration drones for Anders. Just doesn't feel useful at all to me.
Yeah, I would agree there, and I would even say kind of a similar thing to Siphon Field, just real quick. I just never felt like the healing ability was enough. Like, you can't almost use it in combat. Like, this specific power is meant to be used in combat when there are enemy, in the same AoE. But the healing ability is not enough to keep the units inside of it alive. It obviously shouldn't keep everybody alive, because then it would be too overpowered. But it wasn't keeping anyone alive. And I said the same thing about restoration drones. Really neat, like a good power to use after a battle is done. But after a battle is done, you've probably lost a good chunk of units. So why spend 70 energy to heal them when you could just call in another unit? And I feel exactly the same way about this.
Yeah, or even more, send them back to your base.
Right.
Heal them like way faster and save your 70 energy, get some more units in there. I don't know, and they would have to look really hard, I think, at the health rate, the healing rate, pardon me, because you obviously don't want it to be too much. You don't want to just be sitting there wailing on units and they're out healing you. But there's a middle ground there I think we could hit.
Right.
I love me some Shipmaster, the unstable Banshee. We talked a little bit about it in the Shipmaster build. I love that it's good against air, love that it's good against vehicles, and even neutral against infantry. That's fantastic. 130 energy is too much. A standard Banshee is 60. So we're looking at over 2 Banshees for this one. And the blast ability is something that we're gonna see. It feels a little strong right now. But if I'm calling in 130 energy unit, pardon me, I don't want its biggest benefit to be when it dies, because that's a lot of energy. I don't know. I think if you look right next to it, we have arc defense. that's going to be able to attack 12 different units and do all this stuff. I think I'd rather have the arc defense. I know obviously they're different leaders, but when you look at kind of cost benefit analysis, the unstable banshees, it's too much energy. That's bottom line. There's some of these where I think, well, maybe you can buff them, maybe you can make this stronger. I think this unit just needs a lower energy cost.
Yeah, I would agree to that. And the next card we're going to talk about, I'm going to say really very similar things. The one thing that I kind of key in on this with is the fact that it seems like they have certain leaders that almost seem poised to do better against certain other leaders. And this card specifically, to me, being Shipmaster, almost makes me want to kind of say that the Shipmaster seems like it's almost a good setup to go against Anders and her Sentinel kind of build army. Because this, again, the blast ability, like Sloth said, it is decent. It actually does a decent amount of damage if you can place this unit correctly. But I don't think that's a focus that this game wants to go in for two reasons. One, as we've seen in Blitz, when your opponents are choosing their leaders, you have no idea. So it's not like you can play that kind of like cheeky game of like, oh, what's he going to pick? Okay, he locked in. I'm going to pick this now, like, because this build would be better. And two, I think they just want to have overall everyone be a balanced leader. Whether that makes it a slightly different playstyle, that's okay. But having specific units that are meant to kind of like help to take down other specific units outside of the rock, paper, scissors doesn't, to me, seem like the way that they would want to go. Just keep them balanced. So I don't know. We'll hop over real quick to the Trooper Warthog, a unit that me and Sloth have used, 140 energy. No leader restriction here, so anybody can call it in on the UNSC side. Last Stand I like. Last Stand 3 I also like. I don't like this unit for 140 energy. Main reason is it feels like a standard Warthog. It has one additional health bar. It's, to me, it seems like it should be doing more damage and have a significantly more health to keep it alive on the battlefield longer, and that's not, in our experience, been what this unit ends up bringing. It comes in, it does a little bit of damage, and it gets destroyed like a regular Warthog. Honestly, I'd rather have the last Stand 3 units that come out for 140 energy than the Warthog itself. And that's just me. So I think to balance this one, I don't know that you have to do much to the unit itself. If you gave it a little bit more health, a little bit more damage, that would make me feel better about swallowing the 140 energy. Maybe you make it Last Stand 4. That would also help me. But really, I think the easiest way to balance this card would drop it down a little bit energy, because the standard Warthog is 60. Armoreds are at 90. You put this thing around the 110 mark, I think it's going to see some play because it is a good unit. I just think at 140 it's just too high.
Yeah, especially when we look at, okay, say Last Stand 3, you can think of it, I'm getting a Warthog and I'm getting 3 infantry units. Sure, that makes sense that the power is high. But when you look at this thing carries a Gauss cannon.
Right.
Yet the armored Warthog does more damage to vehicles than this thing.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. I would really like to see a big damage increase on the Trooper Warthog. That may mean that maybe that's not going to be in the starting army for Isabel anymore. If that's the byproduct of it, so be it. But we can look at here again. We're going to cross different units and different flags as far as the sides of the battle. But 140 Trooper Warthog versus 160 Enduring Blisterback. Both Last Stand 3. The Enduring Blisterback is a far superior unit, and it has the same ability for 20 extra energy.
Right.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Agree 100%. So the next thing we're going to talk about real quick, I think right here we're going to swap over to close air support. So in playing with all these different leaders, doing all these different leader builds, powers was one of the things that we kind of wanted to try out, specifically damage dealing powers. And I can confidently say, with besides Eradication, I've used them all. Close air support is probably the one that really needs the most to be taken a look at from a standpoint of how much damage it actually deals. I think it sits okay at 180 energy, I think that's a good balance because obviously you don't want these things to be too accessible. But at 180 energy, in my opinion, this does not do as much damage as a Mac Blast does. And we talked a lot in
Hmm.
every other video basically that we can about how awesome the Mac Blast is, how cool it is that you can call it in, target something, and then seconds later, boom, that thing's done. And that round's in and that damage is done. And if you're really, I mean, even if you're really paying attention, you're not getting out of a Mac Blast. I think that's awesome. Keep that the way it is. But something's got to change. And I think damage output and how long these things stay in here really would be the key to make this worth the 180 energy. Um, and I say that because you call it in. It's a great AoE. It's very big. It's the size of a standard point. So it's covering the whole thing, which is awesome. But it feels like these things fly in, they do about 2 laps, and they fly out. And I called it in literally a couple games before we recorded this, and didn't even take out a full health Scorpion. That to me is wrong. Like, if you're calling this
Yeah.
in, obviously you don't want it to destroy everything. There's only 4 of them, so they're only targeting at best 4 things, and a lot of times you'll kind of see it attack in pairs. So 2 of them will shoot one thing, and 2 of them will shoot something else, and they'll kind of rotate around. Perfectly fine with that, because it's kind of one of those those powers that allows you to kind of pull units out if you do see it come in. But to me, they need to do some more laps. They need to get a little bit more flight time in there, and make this worth the energy cost.
Yeah, in Halo 4, we got to use an armored Pelican that was all about kind of this strafing close air support, and that front chain gun sounded like an A10 Warthog. You can't hear individual rounds firing because it's firing so fast, and then you see the same unit in here, and I've never been afraid of the close air support. I see it come in, and I'm like, all right, I'll just sit here and wait until it's gone. Maybe try to heal up a little bit. One way or another, but you're right. It's just not enough damage, and I would even lump in Spirit Assault.
Right.
Same energy. There's no damage. The spirits can kick out some pretty good damage canonically. It doesn't do much, and it does not drop that many units. So 180 energy, that's a good investment. It should be doing a lot of damage.
Right. Or at least some, because this is at least
Yeah.
putting units on the ground, and it doesn't shoot anything.
Yeah.
So. And then another thing that you guys have heard us talk about totally and completely is Atriox is chosen. I freaking love this unit. So if they don't change this thing at all, I would not be sad, but I would feel bad if I didn't end up opening it. Literally in the first like 4 packs or 5 packs that I get when the game releases. So what I think they need to do here with this, his energy cost is good. And the reason I say that is because these are the kinds of guys you only want really one to be on the field at the same time. And that could be something that they could look kind of leaders across the board, where you can only call in one of the specific unit at a time. That's a consideration. But at 210 energy, you're probably not calling these in very fast. In some late games, I have been able to call in 2, and the pair of them together absolutely destroys everything. And I think that's where this guy they need to take a little bit of a look at him. I think they tone his range back. They can keep the shock. They can keep the shield. That's what makes him a hero. He should be an awesome unit, especially for the energy investment. But I think if they pulled his range back a little bit, and maybe they gave him a softer, capability against 1 or 2 of the, infantry vehicles or air, I think would help balance him a little bit. Because what this guy does above the other banished leaders is he has the ability to shoot air and shoot air really well. And his area of effect from his damage is pretty significant every time he fires a shot. And I think that's kind of what makes him also a little bit more balanced, because if you got a group of units that are too close together, he shoots one single shot and he's doing damage to both, and like really good damage. So I think they could take a little damage away from him, maybe make him not so good against 1 of the 3, and then take a little bit of range from him, and then I think he would be okay, worth the energy cost of where he's at.
Yeah, I think the best leader, but I don't, or the best hero, pardon me, but I don't dislike the energy. I mean, I know the Spartans are worth more, but I think having the ability to jack other units and stuff kind of makes it worth it. He's very strong, but I'm okay with his energy right there.
Right.
Not bad. Just like you talked about, range, damage, stuff like that. Just tone it down a little bit. He should be fantastic. He has that really awesome brute shot. He should be awesome. Just maybe not outranging Kodiaks and Blisterbacks and all that stuff. But
Yeah, there's just that.
I think that's something we'll definitely see. The last one we'll do another grouping. We'll do Condor Strike and Scarab Assault. These are ones that when people first start the game, they're like, "Ooh, yeah, that's awesome. I'll do that." When they say briefly deploy, they mean briefly deploy. That's a lot of energy. We feel like it could probably be toned down a little bit, just because they're not on the field long. I really don't want them on the field for very long because they're nigh unkillable. I mean, I think we've killed condors before, but it's just not worth trying to kill them because they don't last very long. So having them there for just a short period of time, if the other guy wants to use that strategically to take a point, probably late game, if he's smart, but that's fine. But I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it's worth 300 to me. As soon as we got any cards that were worth a crap, the Condor and the Scarabs were gone out of all of our decks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these were like instant replacements with heroes. And I also think this is just kind of a side note. They don't necessarily have to change this. I also think it's kind of silly that they give both of these things Y abilities. This to me is if you're calling it in, you should call it in and leave because you have other things to go look at that point. Because you know it's going to either take the point, you know it's going to kill everything on there. Making me call this in and then, make sure the unit's selected and then hit Y to fire the Gauss Barrage seems a little silly to me. Like, this thing should be on autopilot. So again, don't take them out. They are really neat. Like, people having the ability to call in a Scarab, call in a Condor is awesome. But just take a look at damage output, how long they're in there, and then the energy costs, I think, are the three categories that you could make some adjustments in to, keep these in, make them high end, but also don't make them so overpowered and so, heavy costed that, people that are a little bit more inclined to use their heroes and other things end up just taking them out automatically.
Absolutely. And those are about 14 cards that we ended up kind of lumping things together to 10 that we think need to be balanced. Again, that just means they're either good, bad, or ugly, and they need something done to them to make them more viable. Obviously, we skipped over a lot of the things like the grunts at 10, things like that. I think they have their place. I don't think they're particularly effective if you want to build like this big rush army of 30 different grunts. It's an option. I don't think it's effective, but I don't think it should be either. So those are the cards we think that could use the balancing to make them fair or to make them usable because they're right on the cusp. If you have other cards that you think belong in that discussion, let us know. We'd love to hear about them. Hop on over to Reddit, give some feedback to the devs into that subreddit over there. Also, if you have other balancing things of the cards we've talked about, please do let us know. Sharing information and kind of brainstorming as a big group is usually a good way to get some good information and some good ideas. So we do appreciate you guys checking all these videos out, but feel free to contribute as well.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We'll leave you here. Again, please do let us know how you liked it. Throw a like down below. Throw your comments down below. We stay pretty active on YouTube itself and reading the comments that are coming in, and try to respond as soon as we do see them. So, please throw them down there. Obviously, get the community involved in the discussion. And again, like Sloth said, that Reddit thread's going to be your best way to get feedback that's going to be feasible and hopefully seen in the final game. So we'll leave you here. I've been Doc. That's been Sloth. We're Average Gamer, guys. Check out our other videos, and we will check you next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye.